In the world of WWE, nothing is ever truly over. Rivalries that seem buried can be resurrected. Alliances that seem unbreakable can shatter in a single moment. And when it comes to family, especially in the case of the legendary Anoa'i bloodline, betrayal and loyalty can walk hand in hand, tangled in decades of history, pain, and pride. Today, we dive into one of the most emotional, shocking, and powerful twists in WWE history. The story of how Jey Uso was saved from utter destruction, by the return of Roman Reigns and the rise of a terrifying new alliance, the New Shield. But to understand how this incredible turn of events unfolded, we need to rewind and examine how it all led to this moment. Jey Uso, once the right-hand man to the tribal chief, once the heart of the bloodline, once the soul of the Usos, found himself standing at the edge of ruin. How did Jey's path from being part of the most dominant faction in WWE history to facing destruction unfold? It wasn't just about wrestling. It was about family, power, betrayal, and survival. This is the shocking, untold story of the New Shield's rise, Jey Uso's struggle, and how Roman Reigns' return may change everything. Welcome to Wrestling News CC. The fall of Jey Uso. To understand Jey Uso's story, we need to go back to where it all started, the bloodline. When Roman Reigns first began his journey as the tribal chief, he brought along his cousins, the Usos, to help establish his dominance. They were family, united under the powerful legacy of the Anoa'i bloodline. Together, they were unstoppable. Jey Uso was more than just Roman's enforcer, he was his right hand, his most trusted ally, and for a time, the pillar that kept the bloodline together. But as the months went on, something began to change. Jey, like many others in WWE, started to ask himself, is this really where I belong? Is this the legacy I want to carry forward? As Roman became more tyrannical, emotionally manipulating his family, Jey found himself questioning his loyalty. The back and forth with his brother Jimmy, the constant power struggles with solo Sikoa, and the overwhelming weight of being Roman's enforcer began to break Jey. But it wasn't just the emotional toll. It was the physical toll. Jey had fought wars alongside Roman, fought for the bloodline, and given everything for the family's supremacy. And when Jey finally snapped, when he walked away from Roman, he found himself facing the harshest consequences of his defiance. Jey was no longer protected. No longer part of the bloodline's impenetrable wall. He had no one watching his back. No Roman Reigns to stand beside him in the locker room. No Jimmy Uso to have his back in those crucial moments. No Paul Heyman orchestrating the moves behind the scenes that always seemed to save Roman's allies. And it was at that moment, that the wolves began to circle. Judgment Day's rise. In the past few months, one faction has taken the WWE by storm, Judgment Day. Finn Balor, Damian Priest, Dominic Mysterio, and Rhea Ripley have shown no mercy. They've been carving out their place in WWE history, taking not only titles but also the minds and hearts of the WWE universe. But for Jey Uso, Judgment Day wasn't just a threat, they became his nightmare. They weren't just targeting him in the ring. They were coming after him everywhere, backstage attacks, surprise ambushes, and psychological warfare. Finn Balor's manipulations. Damian Priest's brute strength. Dominic Mysterio's calculated interference. And Rhea Ripley's unyielding dominance. Jey was caught in the crossfire of this lethal faction's climb to power. Judgment Day saw Jey as a target, a former bloodline member who had dared to walk away. A symbol of rebellion. Crushing him, they thought, would send a message to everyone else in the locker room. It would break Jey physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And yet, Jey didn't stay down. Week after week, despite the attacks, Jey kept fighting. He kept showing up. He kept proving that he wasn't just main event Jey Uso in name, he was fighting to keep that spot for real. But then something else happened. Something darker. Something more sinister. Solo Sikoa's dark path. Solo Sikoa, the enforcer of the bloodline, had always been a man of few words. But as time went on, he began to fall under the sway of a darker force, Paul Heyman, and the increasingly ominous shadow of the Samoan dynasty. Solo, once loyal to Roman, began to operate in silence, away from Roman's watchful eye. In the shadows, he began plotting with none other than Tama Tonga, a name from the past that nobody saw coming. The attacks on Jey Uso began escalating. It wasn't just Judgment Day anymore. It was a coordinated effort. A group of individuals, acting not under Roman's command, but under the direction of forces far darker and more mysterious than we could have ever imagined. Solo Sikoa and Tama Tonga worked in the background, attacking Jey when the cameras were off, dragging him into parking lots, ambushing him during matches, and destroying his spirit piece by piece. Jey had nowhere to turn. He was a man alone. But in WWE, there are always two things that you can count on, power and family. And that's where Roman Reigns made his return. Roman Reigns' return and the new Shield. Roman Reigns, after months of silence, finally returned to WWE. The WWE Universe had been wondering where the tribal chief had gone. What had happened to the man who had built the bloodline into an empire? But when Roman returned, he didn't return to rebuild the bloodline as we knew it. He didn't return to reassert his dominance in the same way he had before. No, Roman Reigns came back with something far more terrifying. Roman Reigns came back to forge a new alliance, a new group of warriors, united not just by blood but by sheer power and dominance. This was the rebirth of the Shield, and it wasn't the Shield we once knew. Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa, and a returning legend, Seth Rollins, formed what would soon be known as the New Shield. This wasn't just a faction built on friendship. It was built on power. It was built on destruction. And it was built on a singular goal, to protect their own. Roman knew that if Jey Uso was to survive the attacks and rebuild his place in WWE, he needed help. He needed the right kind of help, someone who would fight for Jey and be willing to take down anyone who stood in their way. And with the new Shield at his side, Jey had exactly that. But it wasn't just about survival. It was about sending a message. A message to the entire WWE locker room that the bloodline, or at least the bloodline's true power, was far from over. And when Jey Uso, finally saved from the brink of destruction, stood side by side with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, he realized something: this wasn't just his fight. This was the family's fight. The formation of the new Shield signaled a seismic shift in WWE. Jey Uso, once lost and broken, was now part of a faction with the power to change the future of the company. The new Shield wasn't just a faction of warriors, it was a faction built on the legacy of Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and the Anoa'i bloodline. It was a faction that would do anything, sacrifice anyone, to reclaim what they believed was theirs. The rivalry between Jey Uso and Judgment Day was far from over. It was only just beginning. But now, with the new Shield at his side, Jey had something he hadn't had in a long time: control over his own destiny. The WWE Universe would never be the same. The days of the bloodline as we knew it were over. The days of manipulation, betrayal, and emotional warfare were replaced by a new, more terrifying reign of power. And what does this mean for the future? How will the new Shield affect the other superstars? What alliances will form, and what alliances will shatter? The answers are still to come, but one thing is clear: the power of family, blood, and legacy will always run deep in WWE. And when it comes to the new Shield, the reign has just begun. What do you think about the rise of the new Shield and Roman Reigns' return to power? How will this impact the WWE Universe? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestling News CC for all the latest updates on this evolving story and more. We'll see you next time, right here, on Wrestling News CC. If you thought tonight's story was wild, trust me, what happens next will blow your mind. So don't stop now. Click on the video right here on your screen to continue the chaos, the drama, and the inside scoop only we deliver. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and join the Wrestling News CC family, where the real stories of WWE come to life. See you in the next one.